Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. In all the days of true crime, I don't think there has ever been a case like this one. I don't think there has ever been a case with more going on than in this particular case. The timeline noose is clearly tightening for Colorado dentist James Craig. He is facing a mountain of evidence that he poisoned his wife, Angela, in 2023. I'm going to give you one example of something we heard today. Every day of this trial is packed with moments that are just shocking over and over again. It's unlike other trials where you'll have long days of just kind of boring, here's this that we found and here's none of that. Every witness fascinating, every day unbelievable. And I'm going to be covering both days 8 and 9 tonight. So just here's one example. We know Angela Craig, James Craig's wife, fell ill on March 6th for the first time. There were 3 different incidents. And we know that James Craig had already ordered and received arsenic from Amazon, of all crazy places. And that morning, Angela writes to her husband, James, and she says, "I feel drugged." She mentions that she doesn't feel well, dizzy, etc. And then let me check over here. I forgot to look to make sure y'all can see and hear me. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and make sure. Oh, good. Okay. So she says, "I feel drugged." He writes her back like, "Oh, well, don't look at me. I didn't drug you," which actually her comment, "I feel drugged," kind of a loaded question because it had actually happened once before. He admitted he had drugged her one time before. That's another story. But so at this very time, at the moment that Angela writes to James, James is in the area of his dental office. We can pretty much guess he's in his dental office. How do we know? Someone is sitting in exam room 9, the infamous exam room 9, where James Craig was spotted using the computer, thinking maybe no one would figure out. And he is searching someone, the person in this room is searching for Visine, which contains a poison called tetrahydrozoline, and is searching for tetrahydrozoline poisoning timeline. This is in the middle of texting with Angela about how he would not drug her, for the record, and how sorry he is that she isn't feeling well. And while he is texting his latest, one of several mistresses, an orthodontist named Karen Kane. All of that happening in this short period of time. The defenses are really shocking. They have sort of come to, and normally in a case like this, you would expect the defense to be saying, this defendant is very pure. This defendant has never done anything wrong before, pure as the driven snow. But here they are instead arguing, what's the motive for James to kill his wife, Angela? She was religious. That made her a sucker, basically. She was staying with him no matter what. He'd done this before, again and again. She took him back. She kept going over. Why bother to kill her? And okay, so he had a new side piece. So what? He had 4 going, and that was just at this moment. And he'd hired a prostitute just weeks before. So this guy was busy telling a lot of women that they were the love of his life. This one new woman, this orthodontist, why was she any more special than all the other women he was telling the exact same thing to? So today we're going to cover, and that's, like I say, just one example of what we heard. So we're going to cover days 8 and 9. It's like a true crime documentary just unfolding live in front of us. It's not being broadcast, but I'm watching the entire thing through the court feed, and I am reporting to you on what's happening. So I want to do a special shout out to the first 5 in our chat tonight: Carolyn Knight, Michelle B, Dogs, and More Dogs, Michael Lalonde, and Oklahoma Gigi. By the way, if you haven't yet, would you hit the like button? That'll really help us get out to more people. It wakes YouTube up and lets them know we're here. If you would subscribe too. If you haven't subscribed, we cover all of the cases everybody's talking about. So please come back for more. All right, so let's start with the first witness yesterday. I've tried to pare this down. I mean, I cannot tell you how much there is. I kept, they're not going to want to miss this. And I know they're going to want to hear that. So I'm trying to make this as short as possible while covering 2 days. So we had Casey Bohannan. He had been on the stand at the end of day 7, and he began day 8. So just a quick summary of what he had said on day 7 was that James Craig asked him to plant a journal for Angela. Craig's story was that Angela wanted to unalive herself, and she wanted to frame James Craig for it because she didn't want to be around, but she also didn't want him to be around either. So she wanted to frame him. So James Craig's plan was, he's in jail. He's in jail right now, so he can't just go out and do this. So what he's going to do is rewrite this journal. He claims that what he has been, that this journal used to exist. And somehow law enforcement has hidden it or destroyed it or something. And so it's not around. So he's going to recreate this journal where Angela will tell the story about how she unalived herself. Now, Craig's going to have to write this himself, but it was supposedly going to be Angela's, or at least a lot like Angela's. And the plan was that this other inmate in prison with Craig named Casey Bohannan was going to take this journal with him and then either stick it in James Craig's truck or in the garage for people to find. And then they would all know what James Craig had written in the journal, which is that Angela was unaliving herself. So this whole defense has been from the beginning mystifying to me. James Craig is basically saying that his wife wanted to unalive herself and frame him for it. And in fact, he knew she was writing it down, and the police have found the journal. They've hidden it. But knowing that she wants to harm herself and knowing that she wants to frame him, he nonetheless goes out and buys poisons in his own name to give to her. And he does that to help her out because she couldn't buy them herself. And of course, that's what good husbands do. So on cross-examination of Casey Bohannan, they talked about the fact that Casey sat on this information for a long time through March and April and May and June. And finally, he revealed this right before he was out and his probation was about to be revoked. It was July 13th. He finally emails the DA. Now, the point, obviously, that the defense is making is you're buying something with this. You are only telling this story because you're going to get something for it. But on redirect, he said, well, actually, no one offered him anything. He didn't, in fact, get anything from Detective Olson. He told her he didn't get anything from the DA. So he just told this because he felt it was what he should do. Next witness. And like I say, this goes on. And let me say a quick shout out to 2 new members, Paula Spencer and Nana of 7. Welcome, both of you. So glad to have you as members. And thank you, Michael. I appreciate that super chat very much. And thank you to Annie. Appreciate your super sticker as well. All right. So next witness, Nathaniel Harris. He was Craig's cellmate in November of 2024. James Craig has been in jail since the day after his wife died. It was pretty much he did it from the beginning. From the beginning, they were saying, we think he did it. And they were, while Angela was still alive, before her organs had been harvested for donation, they were already investigating James Craig. They were lining up ready to find him, to put him in jail. So he was in jail this whole time, which meant inconveniently, he was not able to do any of this on the outside. That's why he's trying to get inmates to help him. So here's another inmate he wants to help. This is his cellmate in November of 2024, Nathaniel Harris. And Harris told Craig about his ex-wife, Kazi, and that she had, and I don't know if it's Kazi or Kazi, but she had once faked documents in under Colorado's Organized Crime Control Act. Now, Harris said, I never gave James Craig the address of my wife. But somehow James Craig, even though he was in jail, managed to get this address and write her. Now, that might seem like a really small issue, but the reason it matters is this. Harris is a critical witness on several of the counts that the court has in front of it, that the prosecution has alleged. The most important by far is the death of Angela, but there are several others related to things that James Craig did after he got in jail. Harris is a critical witness, sometimes the only witness on some of these counts. And the jury has to make a decision. Do we trust him when it comes to these other counts? So as we go through this, even little things that reflect on his credibility are going to be important because the jury has to decide whether he's right on each of these counts. So this is his story, basically. He had in his possession an 11-page letter, he says, is from James Craig. He wanted to turn this in. And this took a couple of witnesses, and it'll take me a couple of witnesses to tease this out for you. But he said, yeah, he didn't want to be known as a snitch. And so authorities did a Suboxone sweep through the jail, trying to find where there were drugs coming out in the jail. They felt like there were drugs being traded by somebody. During this search, they discover this document. And what happened was he, as I said, was roommates with Craig. They got moved out and they discover this document and it gets seized. And it looks like it is something that is supposed to go to an attorney. And I wondered at the time, I'm like, how are they able to look at that document? Well, there are answers to that. We will find that out. But this letter did Craig no good because apparently when she found out about what he wanted to do, the ex-girlfriend, Cassie, was furious. She didn't want anything to do with this, so she didn't do it. There was another plot he talked about, which was a plot that Craig said he could involve his son in. He said, go to my son. He can help you locate the lead detective and another deputy, Deputy Hillstrand, who's working on my case. And I want detective, according to what Harris said, James Craig said, I want you to kill the lead detective on my case, Bobby Olson. And I'd also like you to kill an inmate I met in medical. I don't know what they did, but something to really offend him. I don't know. Craig claimed Olson, the detective, was making up evidence, fabricating evidence against him. And he was willing to pay up to $20,000 for somebody to with all this. And he told Harris, I also think my son can help you locate these people. And then I want you to photograph Deputy Hillstrand's son getting off the school bus, obviously meant to intimidate. Craig also mentioned he had a storage unit with an F-150 truck, $5,000 in cash, and a .308 sniper rifle in the glove box of the truck. So Harris, as the defense pointed out, and both sides pointed out, has a felony history. In fact, in the middle of his testimony, he actually invoked the Fifth Amendment on the stand in front of this jury about a probation violation he may have in Denver. So on cross-examination, they talked about some of the deals that had been cut for him over the last year or two. For example, he had one 22-year sentence, but he only served 10 years and 7 months. And he was asked by the defense, and you expected a benefit for giving Craig up, didn't you? And he said, sure. And they also said, you don't like Mr. Craig, do you? He said, no, I don't. And the lawyer said, you've been staring him down ever since you got here in court, haven't you? And he said, no, I've been looking at you. Again, protective order. That's what I had to say. So he was crossed also on the fact that he could have reported this earlier, but he did not. And also on the fact that this murder for hire letter that supposedly was written by James Craig was in Harris's box under his bunk, marked as legal mail. And he had never bothered to mail it out as legal mail. And he didn't just hand it over. Instead, they found it in the search. And after that search, he texted his wife, from whom he was estranged, and said, "I'm coming home." Again, protective order. So Harris denies he was facing a case that would revoke his probation. He said he would have to go to prison if that happened, but the judge did. So let me explain. Let me back up a little bit. So Harris is asked, okay, well, aren't you facing a case that could end up revoking your probation? And he's like, no, I'm not facing any case like that. And so the judge takes judicial notice. Well, yes, he was facing a probation revocation hearing on July 31st of this year, in 1 week, in other words. So, and the original charge he was in for was a felony, 8 to 32 years. He's still awaiting sentencing on that drug case, but prison is not on the table anymore. It's been taken off the table. He says it has nothing to do with his testimony in this case. Plus, there was another case, a 2024 motor vehicle theft. So a lot of cases against him. Much of this was kind of confusing, but it got cleared up with the next witness, Sergeant Hudson. So here is what he explained. And let me say thank you, Mama Pinks, who is one of our two mods, our other one being Marlon. Very grateful to both of them. Says, Lawyer Lee is channeling her inner Mama Pinks today. It's true. It's true. Thank you, Mama Pinks. And congratulations to Tim, who just got bid certification. Spunky, thank you. I'm so glad you've been a member for 10 months. And from Mildred, just Mildred, thank you very much for your comment. All right. Mildred is concerned that there might be more victims or might have been. Who knows? Who knows? It's a wild case with a lot of tentacles. I'll say that. All right. So here's what Sergeant Hudson explained. Kind of gave us a little background. So back on November 9th of 2024, James Craig has been in jail for a year and a half by them. Yeah, year and a half. And the Sergeant Hudson or the police get a call from Loretta Harris about a letter her husband is holding for James Craig. So Hudson didn't tell deputies about this. Instead, he staged a Suboxone search in order to get this letter. The target was this murder for hire letter that he'd heard about. He went straight to the plastic tote underneath the bunk where Harris slept, but it didn't have the letter. So then he goes to Harris and asks him, well, where's this letter that you told me about? And Harris said, look for a legal envelope marked Sam Allman. And yep, that's where he found it. And it was legal mail, but he asked, is it okay if I seize this and open it? And Harris agreed to that. It was a multi-page letter, 11 pages. And Craig's story was that he had been unjustly accused. That's what he says in the letter. And now he's got to turn to such tactics himself, he said, and said, thank you in advance for making me and my kids the happiest people on earth. Signed, Jimmy Craig. He offered $20,000 per witness that could be obtained for this. It was a letter telling the recipient, which I believe would have been Cassie, to involve her sister. Let's get more than one person involved. And asked Cassie, would you spoof it, make some Photoshop and fake phone records? He said, you have a blank check here. And he gave her a few rules or things she should do in order to make this happen. First, tell the DA that Angela made threats of unaliving herself. And she really did that to manipulate James Craig. But she told Cassie, who is going to pose as her friend, that she never really meant that. So Cassie is going to pretend she was friends with Angela. And they're going to involve, this is in Craig's mind, they're going to involve Cassie's sister, who can say she met Angela at the genealogy library. He did make a point, visit the library so your story sounds real. And then together, they were supposed to set up the office manager, Caitlin Romero. She was the one who said James Craig had received poison at the office. As she explained it, she was told in advance by James Craig, I'm going to be getting a personal package. So don't open it. It's personal. She said, okay. However, the package came into the front desk and they, not realizing it, opened this box. They had no idea what this was. So they brought it to Caitlin Romero, the office manager. She looks at it. It's a silver canister. She's never seen anything like that in a dentist's office. So but she figures this must be the personal package. She looks at it. She looks at the invoice. It's potassium cyanide. So she packages it all up, puts it back on his desk. He'll never know. It's all packaged up again. But she also Googled potassium cyanide. And then when Angela got sick, it sounded eerily familiar. All the same problems that could have happened with potassium cyanide seemed to be happening to Angela. So she blew the whistle. Meanwhile, as it turned out, Caitlin Romero had in the past an affair with James Craig. She said it was just an emotional affair, but they had a deep connection. So now James Craig wants to set her up. He is claiming that the office-wide manager, whose name is Jackie, and his business partner, Dr. Ryan, have paid Caitlin to frame him. And it was Dr. Ryan Redfern, that they paid Caitlin. And this is all she's being framed. So now they need to strike back at this. Long, complicated story, but a lot of these are. Lots and lots of little directions that this heads in. So on cross-examination, they mostly pointed out that Sergeant Hudson, there were some gaps in what he knew. For example, he really didn't know how long Harris had been housed with Craig, and he didn't bother to verify the girlfriend that the person who called him, Loretta, really was connected to the prisoner. He didn't check messages between them and so forth. And there was oddly a property sheet in that same underneath the bunk area that didn't have Harris's name and didn't have James Craig's name. And the suggestion is maybe Harris was looking for ways to set up somebody else so he could strike a deal, but it wasn't really fully explained. So the next witness was Loretta Harris. She is the estranged wife of Nathaniel Harris, the witness we just talked about. She got a letter addressed at her home from Jimmy, and she put the envelope under her front porch mat, and a law enforcement officer came and picked it up. So, she talked to them about it. She said, I've received this. They said, okay, don't open it. Just stick it underneath the front porch mat. We will pick that up. And so that's what she did. Now, she mentioned that she is still married, legally married to Nathaniel Harris. They've known each other for 25 years. They are not together. And, quote, he has a reputation for untruthfulness. So the next witness, Carrie Hagisth, is a Lyft driver and a mom who met James Craig on seeking.com. And she was completely upfront. That's a website seeking sugar arrangements. Now, it says it's not a website seeking sugar arrangements. However, in actuality, it is exactly that, she said. And so what happened was Craig had a profile on this, as did she. And Craig said married but separated on his profile. They had multiple meetups at restaurants, a hotel. It was sexual, she said. And their first date was in fall of 2022. Craig told her he wasn't happy in his marriage. He wanted a divorce, but it was nearly financially impossible. He said it would leave him completely broke and destitute like you. And they met at a nice restaurant in Greenwood Village, and he told her about a movie called The Purge. And the idea behind it is you have one day to kill without consequence. You can do whatever you want, no consequences. And so she said, well, who would you kill? And he said, my wife. And he described injecting someone in the neck to get away with it, and mentioned to her that his wife did want to unalive herself. So on January 4th, Craig tells Carrie that his wife found the DoubleTree receipt for one of their meetings, that she found that he had made payments to her attorney, that he had given her, I think it was $9,000 for a car for her daughter. There were Venmo transfers. And he says he told his wife, I met Carrie on seeking.com, but I'm not sleeping with her. I'm just helping her out because of her great need. And Carrie said this was false. That Craig said, well, my wife may call you. I just now you know what I told her. So on January 9th, he texts her again because she hasn't written him back. And he meant, or at least a few days later, he sends that same message again because she hasn't written back. And then on January 9th, he tells her, I'm not mad at you because I'm not contacting you. I'm just doing some serious damage control over here. And then on January 14th, he wrote her, I don't see a way out for me. And she writes him, sweetheart, don't say that, please. You have so many reasons to live. And James Craig tells her, I'm not happy, but I can't get divorced right now. I'm not wanting unaliving. I'm just stuck. So on February 1st, he tells Carrie, do you know anyone who can help me with my problem down here? I can pay handsomely. And Carrie understood by problem, he meant wife. Can someone help me with my wife? I can pay handsomely. And she said, I think you should hit up a homeless person. Not exactly sure what that meant, but he said, hitting up a homeless person actually sounds like the only choice right now. I made $66,000 in January, and I want desperately to share that with you. I feel so trapped. And on February 13th, says, oh, geez, babe, I so wish I could figure stuff out over here. I could help you in a heartbeat. On February 14th, he says, I want to be with you so bad. There were numerous women he wrote this to. I think a lot of what you're going through could be solved with money. He says, we need to solve my problem and move forward together. Again, she thinks problem means his wife. On February 15th, he offers Carrie $2,000 and says, I know how this works. We are in an arrangement. I would hope that your resourcefulness will also be able to help me with my problem in some way. On cross-examination, they pointed out that Craig was using a Google Voice number and changed numbers often, meaning that his wife didn't know about their relationship. He must have been trying to hide it. And that some of the text messages between them had some pet names like baby and babe. I miss you too. I think about you every damn day, he told her one time. And she got a fair amount of financial support from him. $5,000 for a lawyer, $9,000 for her daughter's car, Christmas cash, $100 for every child. I don't know how many she had. And Craig offered to bring $2,000 if they met for lunch. This was on February 15th. She told him, that would help me so much, babe. It really does explain. We heard that his business partner was kind of mystified as to why he didn't seem to have enough money, but this could explain some of the problems that he was having. She said their relationship ended on February 18th on her birthday. There was no further contact after that. She said he had talked to her about maybe marriage in the future, that was something that might happen for them. All right, we are going to flip over to day number 9 today. And we heard from yet another seeking.com meetup that he had another person he met on seeking.com. This was Elizabeth Gore. She said, what is seeking.com? She said it's for finding a sugar daddy. That she met him in person 3-4 times. He gave her $8,000 via Venmo. And they went on their 4th meetup to Montana for a ski trip. They left on a Thursday afternoon. They got into the Airbnb, and the next morning was a Friday. She had to do work. She was a data analyst. She had to do that in the morning, and then they were headed over to the ski lifts for the afternoon. So during their drive to the lifts, James had to pull over, and she sat in the car for an hour and a half to 2 hours while he was on the phone with his wife. He gets back in and says, I need to go home. She knew he was married, she said. She didn't ask for any details. She didn't want to know any more than that. And the wife had found out that he was with another woman in Montana. So they turned around and went back and got plane tickets to go back home to Denver. after the ski trip, he told her he was actively getting divorced. We know that Angela didn't think that, and he was texting Angela in a way that would be not getting divorced. She said, yes, there was a sexual component to the relationship. If he said he was not physically involved with her, she said, yeah, that would be false. We know that's what he told Angela. So there were ongoing text messages between Elizabeth Gore and James Craig. And if he told his wife, she said, that he had stopped communicating with anyone from seeking.com, that would be false because he was still texting her. And what happened was, according to the cross-examination, because we moved into cross, that Angela found out that he was cheating, that he was in Montana with another woman. And he didn't say, oh, well, too bad. She's gone anyway. We're almost done and we're going to stay here. He said, I got to go home. I got to see if I can fix this. I think the point the defense is making is that he wanted his marriage, and so he would want Angela to be with him. So on January 14th, he responded and said, he sent her another text message. Hi, Lizzie, I think about you every day. He said, and the crosswords, that's how he would communicate. Very affectionate in his words, a lot of affirmations for you, telling you you were great, telling you you were awesome. And that a lot of, I think about you, I miss you. And the witness was asked, well, he was communicating with other women, right? You've learned that? And she said, yeah. And so on February 22nd to 23rd, he texts her. This is an important point in time because he is texting her while he's in Las Vegas. He says to her, he has a room overlooking the Bellagio fountains. It's beautiful. And he writes her, I know you're going to bed soon. Knowing you may already be in bed. Thanks for texting me so much today. I really liked that. He texts about Las Vegas, said they rented out Legion Field. We had a dinner on the field. It was pretty fun, I guess. It was a unique experience anyway. And the reason that's so important, this is exactly when he is meeting the woman that they are going to that the prosecution says is the woman he was going after so hard and was ultimately the reason he unalived his wife. One of, anyway, the motives for unaliving Angela. By the way, can I ask you, if you were just coming in, if you haven't hit the like button, would you please hit the like button? I would appreciate that. And subscribe. All right. So here's the thing. In Las Vegas is when he meets Karen Kane. They meet, they have a fun talk as they're waiting to board that bus to go to that very field he is telling Elizabeth about. And is this Elizabeth? I've gotten all the women on. Yes, this is Elizabeth. I've gotten all the seeking.com women mixed up. I wonder if he ever had that problem. So he's meeting Karen Kane. That's going to be a pretty significant relationship, at least in her mind. She's an orthodontist from Texas. They're at this convention for dentists and orthodontists, and they spend the whole weekend together. He goes running over at the last minute when his plane is delayed to give her one more goodbye kiss. And she ultimately visits him in Denver. She's been told that he's separated from his wife and lives in an apartment. In fact, as it turns out, she's there. He doesn't live in an apartment. He still lives with his wife, who is in the hospital, brain dead, while she's visiting. Very, very horrendous circumstances. But he's telling Elizabeth about this same thing, this trip to Las Vegas. He's not mentioning that he just met Karen Kane. And he doesn't tell her that he ran to the other terminal to give another woman a kiss. On February 28th, now mind you, Karen Kane thinks they are in the relationship blossoming into a forever thing. He's telling Karen Kane that. Meanwhile, he's telling his wife, we're forever. You're the woman for me. I'm so glad we stuck it out. And on February 28th, he sends Elizabeth flowers. He explains he's going to be going through a divorce, not what he's telling Angela. And she tells him, Elizabeth does, I don't want to complicate that process. He talks about introducing her to his children. She's like, no, just no, that would put me in a really bad position. I am not willing to meet your kids. That is not what she was interested in, what the site was about, not what he was talking about. So on March 2nd, he said, to Elizabeth, I look forward to the day when you could maybe be a part of this, meaning his family and everything. And he asked, am I texting you too much? And she's like, yes, you are. That is way too much. Given your situation right now, it's too much for me. So on redirect, the prosecutor said, James Craig came on really strong. And she said it was an extreme turnoff for her, that she never reciprocated on any of that marriage and the future and blending families. I want you to realize here what the defense is doing on cross-examination. On cross-examination, they're talking to these witnesses about, look, Karen Kane wasn't the only one. He had tons of mistresses. He told everybody they were special and important. He made sure everybody was hearing that from him. He told everybody they were great, everybody they were awesome. This is not something unique to Karen Kane or you or anybody else. That's actually the defense argument, is this guy is such a lying cheater that he cheated with everybody. You're not that special. You're not that important. That's exactly what the defense is arguing. So very unusual, unique defense argument. I've never heard that before. So the next witness was truthfully a tough witness to get through. Mark Prey, Angela's older brother, testified. They have nine siblings, total 10 in the family, and Angela was the baby. They ranged all the way, a 21-year gap, 2021, and she was his younger sister by about 10 years. He said, like everyone else who has testified about her, that Angela was not manipulative. She was not desiring to unalive herself. And he added this, there's only one person in the world who would say that, and that's the one who murdered her. Objection. And then the judge struck that. But it had been said. When Angela was sick, everyone was trying to figure out what was wrong. She wasn't trying to harm herself. She wanted to know. She was concerned. She was frustrated. And on March 12th, he got a message from James Craig saying that Angela had crashed that very night. I was sleeping by her in the hospital on a stool next to the bed, and nurses came in and said her oxygen was down in the 50s. She was lethargic and difficult to arouse. They got her stabilized. They're checking for infection. They're checking her troponin, something to do with the heart, EEG in the morning. Said, I didn't even know anything was wrong. Just seemed like she was snoring loudly. Just wanted you all to know. And the prosecutor says, so James Craig told you in this text message both that he heard her snoring loudly and that he was sleeping next to her. And the prosecutor said, and yes, that's what he said. And the prosecutor said, did he mention he arrived only 15 to 20 minutes before the crash? And that question wasn't allowed, but we got later information in the day that showed that it was really just a 15 to 20 minute gap from the time his car and cell phone data showed his arrival there at the hospital until she crashed. But he claimed to people working there, as well as to her brother, that he had managed in that period of time to fall asleep while simultaneously hearing her snoring and to completely miss out on all the bedlam of the sounds and bells and alarms that were going off when her oxygen dropped to 50. So on March 12th to 13th, her whole family was very alarmed by this. And James pretty much put out a lifeline. We need some help here. And so the brother and his wife came out to help with the kids. So this is Mark and his wife came out to help with the kids. They were staying with Angela and Jim, or at their house. Anyway, Angela was at the hospital. And they did visit her a day after, but they spent the first day helping with the kids and so forth. And then they saw her. She was able, this is her last day in the hospital, last full day, the 13th. She's sitting up. She's able to eat a little bit. And then they went back on Tuesday to pick her up to take her home. And she was talking. She seemed to be in pretty good spirits, he said. There was no indication that she had any idea what was wrong with her, but she could walk on her own. And there was no indication she wanted to die. She wanted to know what was happening to her and what was causing all these symptoms. So this is March 14th. And he says that James Craig made his wife a shake or a drink that evening, that he was providing Angela with food and drink and her medicine. And he told them to be extra sure to make sure that Angela took her clindamycin in the morning. That's an antibiotic that she had been sent home with. Well, let me correct that. It was actually an antibiotic that James himself had prescribed to her, an antibiotic that was in capsule form. So on March 15th, this is the day when Angela is going to go back to the hospital. James texts them that morning various instructions for the day for the kids. Like they're going to go here and there, and here's the time. And says, don't forget, Ange is due for her next clindamycin at 10 a.m. And she takes 2. And so the witness, Mark, the brother, points out this prescription bottle in a photo as it's sitting right beside the bed. And who gave it to her that morning? He says he did. And he breaks down in tears at this point. You can see he's really breaking down because he believes now that he gave her the poison that killed her, that it was inside the capsules that he was instructed by James to give her as an antibiotic. He gave her 2 capsules, just like he was told, and a dramatic change happened within a matter of minutes, 20 to 25 minutes after she took those. He had made her that morning oatmeal with apples and cinnamon. She hadn't been eating much, and it took her a long time to eat this, but she got it all down. About 10 o'clock, they gave her the medicine, and within 20 to 25 minutes, she could not even hold herself up. She was sitting up in bed, but she was bent over, and she could not hold her body up. That would make it most consistent, let me mention, with cyanide, because cyanide had just arrived to James Craig's office on the 13th. It could have, and it acts very quickly. So that's what I think the brother believes and what the prosecution believes was in that capsule he gave her. The defense does have a very good argument on this, so hold on for that. So let's go through what happened next. He basically carries her out to the car, and she's answering, but it's really hard for her to answer, but she's still talking. There are actual photos of them from the hospital surveillance video of them arriving at the hospital and going through security and going through triage. And he makes the comment, yeah, they have security because apparently some murder victims, people try to come and finish the job. And the judges, there was an objection, and the judge's voice, frankly, showed she was a little bit mad at that. He was like, oh, I didn't mean Angela. But so there was a very long sidebar on that. I'm not sure exactly what happened because we don't get the sound from the sidebar. I wondered if they were asking for a mistrial. There was apparently a lot of discussion about sequestration, the witnesses being able to hear and see what other witnesses say. And that may have been what they were covering, but your guess is as good as mine. So Jim arrives at the hospital. Now, Mark is there with his wife, Renee. They're the ones who brought Angela to the hospital. And Renee leaves to go back home while Jim is there at the hospital. No need for all 3 of them. So she's going to be back with the kids. But Jim, he says, doesn't really stick around for that long and said he had to take care of some work things so he could come back and spend the rest of the day. And the prosecution says, now, he never mentioned he was going home, did he? And he said, no, he said he was going to work. And that's obviously something we're going to hear about in just a minute, about how he was actually going home. The prosecution is suggesting and hinting that he went home to maybe dispose of the bottle, who knows, or to get more poison, again, who knows. So Jim gets back, and according to Mark, Jim kind of gets rid of him, like basically, says, you can go now. And Mark's thought was, well, I feel like, spouses trump brothers, and maybe he just wants to be alone with her. So I'll respect that and I'll go on. So he does not even make it home. It's a 25 to 30 minute drive. He does not even make it home before he gets a call from his sister, who doesn't even live in Denver, saying it's been maybe 10 or 15 minutes since he left. And Tony is telling him, Angela crashed and you need to turn around and go right back to the hospital. He said he did that immediately. He gets there and her room is a madhouse. And James Craig, is sitting outside by the nurse's station, just kind of looking on. Now, he said from time to time, he noticed James would be absent for periods of time. He may have said where he was going, but he doesn't really remember that. What he does remember, of course, is that madhouse all around his sister as she lay there and they were trying to stabilize her. One of the things I think the prosecution is suggesting is that one of the women he was involved with, Karen Kane, was in town. Maybe James was headed out to see her and then coming back and forth from seeing Karen Kane to his wife dying in the hospital, Karen Kane, wife dying in the hospital, kind of back and forth like that. Thank you, Jackie P. I appreciate your gifting 5 lawyerly memberships. I'm really losing my voice here. Give me just a second. Did I not tell you this case is unbelievable? I mean, I'm not even through with today. It's person after person, witness after witness. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. Again, if you're new coming in, be sure to hit that like button. So this witness clearly was really angry, and you could tell that with some of the comments that he made. The judge pretty much let him, nothing was said to him about what he said, but you definitely could tell he was very, very angry with James Craig. It is, after all, his sister. So you could see that. He said that, he was asked about James Craig being kind of agitated at the hospital, and the cross was trying to suggest, well, the kids were waiting. They weren't able to see Angela. And he said at one point, he texted Jim Craig. They were all together. The kids were there too. They wanted to see their mother and they weren't allowed to. Now, why? Because there was a question about whether or not Angela had been poisoned. The office manager had reported to the business partner, Ryan Redfern, who came and told the hospital, who told the police. And now everybody's trying to figure out, has she been poisoned? And if so, what's the poison? They knew he had cyanide. So they're testing. They're trying to figure all of this out. So Mart thinks, well, maybe Jim doesn't realize this is happening. So he texts right across, they're sitting right across the table, but all the kids are there and he doesn't want them to know. So he texts them that says, I think they view this as a suspicious death. And that's why it's taking so long for us to be able to see her. He said that Jim left and came back a little while later. And Mark Prey texted him while he was gone. He's like, where are you? Your kids need you right now. So on either March 17th or 18th, this is right at the period of time when they are going to have to disconnect Angela from life support. She was declared brain dead between the 15th and the 16th. And what they were waiting for was to be able to harvest organs because she was an organ donor. So on either the 17th or 18th, Mark gets up pretty early and he sees Jim pulling up in a truck like he's already been somewhere, and he has an overnight bag with him. And I asked him, where were you? And he says he went for a drive. But he never said he went to stay at a hotel. He never said he met someone named Karen Kane. So the defense says, well, think about it this way. Jim Craig, you believe, poisoned his wife, but he's okay with you coming to stay at his house. I mean, maybe he just needed time to be able to go back to work. Maybe it really was what he said. He just needed help. And also pointed out that Angela didn't share everything with about Jim. For example, she never told her brother that Jim had not just infidelity, but years of infidelity. Again, this is a question coming from the defense. to her brother, why, my client here not just cheated on your sister, he cheated on her over and over again, and she never even told you, did she? That's from the defense. That is the defense in the case. So there you have it. All right. So he also said the cross-examination really wanted to go after his testimony that he had seen Jim Craig make a drink for Angela. And he said he made her drink for the, according to the cross, this is the first time you've said that. He said, no, I mentioned it in my interview with the police. I don't know where my wife may have told me, but I know I mentioned it in my interview with the police. One of the biggest pieces of cross-examination we've seen, though, pretty important one, is when they gave her those capsules in the morning that they believed that cyanide powder was, the capsules were opened up, cyanide powder put in, and then that was how the cyanide was given to Angela. That's the hint anyway, through those pills, because she became sick so quickly after taking them. But those capsules were inside a pill bottle. And he just opened it up. They weren't lying out. It wasn't like, these 2 pills right here, give her those. He said he had to open it up and shake the pills out. So how did James Craig know that those 2 pills that she got would have cyanide? Because the pill bottle was tested and the pills did not have cyanide. So that is a good point. That's a really good point. How is that possible? How did he know that? And that's why it's so important to the prosecution to prove that he went home by himself and lied about it, said he was going to work, and instead went home. I think their argument is that's when he disposed of the pill bottle, maybe swapped out the pills, like none of those that have potassium cyanide. Now it's going to be only pills that actually have the real medication in it, something along those lines. So after Craig left the ICU, he was gone so long at one point, I said he kept disappearing, that Mark actually texted him, are you having trouble finding it? He said the ICU was kind of hard to find. And so the cross-examination was, well, that text that you say you wrote, that's not in this list of text messages. But this witness had already seen all the cross-examination. That's something the defense has been doing over and over. And what they point out is, here's a summary, some of the key text messages, and it doesn't include all of them. They've said that with witness after witness. And each time on redirect, the prosecution says, well, this is just a summary. It was never intended to include everyone, right? So this witness just volunteered, yeah, well, this is not everything. This is just some group text. They also pointed out that this time around, Angela had wanted to go to a different hospital. The point of that being, she felt like, I've been going to the Parker Adventist. I've gone there twice and they haven't been able to do anything for me. I want to go somewhere else and see if they can figure out what the heck is wrong. And therefore, she really wanted to get better. This isn't a matter of her wanting to unalive herself. That doesn't even fit with what's going on here. There was questioning from the cross-examination about Angela being a religious person with the LDS faith, Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, formerly Mormon Church, and saying, faith dictates that families can be eternal, but it's not a given that the eternal family doesn't end at death. But I honestly, I have no idea why they asked her that. I mean, maybe to say that Angela wasn't giving up on him because of her religion and therefore he didn't need to kill her. She wasn't going anywhere. But I couldn't figure out, how does it help the defense to point out that the eternal family goes on? Is that Angela believed? I don't know. I really can't figure it out. If you have any idea, please put that in the chat, because it remained a real confusing point for me. The juror had tons of questions for Mark. Did James and Angela ever tell you they were getting separated? No. When you took her to UC Health, did she have a backpack with her? He said, I don't recall grabbing a bag. And he said, I was carrying Angela and she couldn't carry anything. So I don't know. Maybe if my wife had one. And then, was Jim carrying anything when he arrived other than the lunch he brought you. And he said he didn't remember. But of course, it doesn't have to be very big, frankly. But because there is a suggestion that she received another dose of something while at the hospital where she had another crash on the 15th. So the defense started talking about, outside the presence of the jury, this whole sequestration issue, because the witness had mentioned, my wife is going to testify next. And the court didn't seem particularly concerned about that. The whole point of sequestering witnesses is to make sure they don't hear each other's testimony. It's not to make sure they don't know when anyone else is testifying. I mean, they have to arrange rides and cars and stuff. So that's really not the point. Nell, thank you so much for gifting a Lawyer Lee membership. I really appreciate that. All right, let's head into the next witness, Renee Prey. She is married to Mark Prey and Angela's sister-in-law. James is her brother-in-law, and they were the ones who came to try to help out with the kids while Angela was so ill and not feeling well. So on March 15th, moving straight to that time, this is the day when they're going to take her to the emergency room at the University of Colorado. And Jim Craig texted her and said, how's Angela doing? This is about before 10. And he said, I've been texting Angela, but she's not responding to me. She's opening her text, but not. Did she take her medicine? He says, and she confirmed, yep, we gave Angela her meds. She's gotten them for sure. And then she realized, she said, after a luxurious bowl of oatmeal, medicine is now entering the body. So she said, we're giving it to her. And then 20 minutes later, she texted Jim saying, Angela is not well. Angela is not well. What had happened was Angela had hollered out, and they rushed in there and they took her vitals, and she was pulling her oxygen tank off because she was saying, we're going to the hospital, and we're going to a different hospital, and we're going to figure this out. So 2 critical pieces of information, 3 that she gave, 3 critical pieces of information. Number 1, she said that James Craig wanted to know more details about whether or not Angela was lucid, and he questioned their choice to take her to the hospital. Said he thought she should be resting at home. Implication, maybe he wanted her to die. Next, he said the hospital wanted to get a urine sample from Angela, and Jim was like, is that really necessary? I mean, she's not on drugs. Do you really need that? And then Jim told them that Angela's last words right before she crashed, he was the only one in there with her, came running out and said she had crashed. Her last words were, why do I hurt? It's just pitiful. I mean, that is appalling. But in any event, that is what James Craig himself said her last words were. So according to them, Angela had been, according to the cross-examination, the defense, Angela was asking for her laptop. And Jim responded and said, okay, here's where the laptop is. And specifically asked, what meds did she get? And I don't know why the defense would bring that up, because it kind of looks suspicious to me. James Craig not only wants to make sure she's getting her meds, but what medication she got. But the witness, Renee, admitted nothing that Jim was doing seemed odd. It seemed pretty much like a concerned husband would act, like someone would act if they loved their wife and they were desperately ill like this. And by the way, he asked what medicine, and it was clindamycin, the one that he himself had prescribed for Angela. She did not remember anything about the shake being made for Angela by James Craig. But she said on the 14th, Angela was doing pretty well. She was talking to us. She was doing some research on the computer. Things seemed pretty good. We next heard from Tony Kofed, who lives in Utah and is Angela's older sister. They are 13 years apart. She said, Angela was my younger sister and best friend. She said, just like everyone else, Angela was not a wild risk taker, never wanted to unalive herself, was not manipulative. We got the immediate limiting instruction, this we're going to talk about an extramarital relationship. This is only for motive and intent for the crimes charged. This is not for just general purposes because he's a bad guy. So back in 2018, Angela had disclosed to her sister Toni that James had had an affair. Jim had come home and told her that he had been having an affair with someone for 6 months and he had intended to leave her. And Angela was trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? Do I stay? Do I go? I mean, does he even want to stay? I don't really know where we are. And then we immediately moved into the next instruction. Remember that prior drugging incident? That's only for motive and knowledge and intent for these crimes, the crimes charged. She knew about this. She knew that Jim had given her a substance without her consent. The reason, according to Jim, he wanted to unalive himself. He didn't want Angela to get in his way or prevent that. So he drugged her while he was doing it, but he changed his mind. So the only thing that really happened was that he drugged Angela. That was it. But they stayed in the marriage and worked through it, and it moved on. She said, Toni did, that on December 9th of 2022, Angela texted me that she had found some stuff on Jim's computer and he had made it impossible for her to stay. Now, this is almost certainly the exact time that Angela has the conversation while the woman is with him in Montana and they're supposed to be going skiing. And they stop on the side of the road. Jim gets out, talks to his wife for an hour and a half while the woman sits there. That's almost certainly when this was. She said, Angela told her sister Toni, I'm going to stay through Christmas and then I'm going to consider just ending things. Said, I'm not ready to talk about this yet, but I'm feeling very broken and very alone. He's made it impossible for me to stay. But by the very next day, December 10th, she had decided she would stay. And by December 11th, Angela no longer believed James Craig was having an affair at all. She actually writes Toni and says, I thought he was cheating again. He wasn't, which is so unbelievably ironic because we have heard from witness after witness with whom he was cheating. But somehow, once again, he managed to convince her of this. And in the end of February, early March of 2023, according to Toni, James and Angela were really on the mend. That they had a visit in early March where Angela flew out to where Toni was. They went together to a convention there in Utah. And at no point did Angela suggest she wanted to unalive herself. She was tired when she picked her up, just exhausted. And she said the reason was Angela and Jim Craig had been up all night fighting, said Angela. But she said she had promised she was not going to tell Toni what it was, and she never told me, said Toni, what it was about. So, but Angela recovered. They had a great time, a lot of fun, totally healthy, not ill at all. And on March 6th, all of a sudden, she's sick. March 5th, she got back home, and on March 6th, she hears from Toni that Angela is sluggish. She says her eyes are moving slowly. Her body doesn't want to work. On March 7th, she's saying maybe I have an inner ear infection. And states, I just hope we figure out what's wrong and take care of it. I hate not knowing. Again, undermining the defense idea that she doesn't want to get better. She's doing this to herself. And then Angela also talks a lot about blood sugar. The strangest part of all of this is my blood sugar was so high. The family had a history of diabetes. So they start talking, could it be diabetes? Now, interestingly, I looked up arsenic, and arsenic can cause elevated blood sugar. So that, again, plays into the prosecution theory that this is related to arsenic or poisoning instead of related to something naturally wrong with Angela. So Toni starts texting James, like, how's she doing? And at no point does James say anything suggesting he has any clue as to why Angela is sick. And in fact, he said many times, I don't know why she's sick. I wish we could figure out why she's sick. So on March 9th, this is the second hospitalization. The first one was really, she went and then was was not admitted to the hospital. On the 9th, she was admitted. And Angela tells Tony, you know, I'm sorry I didn't respond to you last night. I had a headache and nausea, dizzy, tired. My muscles don't want to work. I'm hoping that will go away. And I'm drinking a protein drink and lots of liquid. Now, who made her the protein drink? She doesn't say. On March 14th, Angela has by now been admitted to the hospital. She was there the 9th through the 14th. She's about to be discharged after this pretty good-sized stay. And there's a phone call from Tony, the sister, to James Craig, 39-minute call, and Tony is checking on Angela. This is the last time they will ever speak. And they ended up, she was talking to James Craig, but he put Angela on speakerphone, and she talked to her sister. Angela was sitting up in bed. She was awake, and she heard Jim say, Ange, take your clindamycin. Now, that was not the medication that Angela normally took. If she had a sinus infection, which she did have on a regular basis, she normally took a Z-Pak or erythromycin in a tablet form. She didn't normally take clindamycin in a capsule form, a capsule being something that you can open. That's the difference that I think the prosecution is trying to point out. So on cross-examination, again, we had sort of a strange take on it. Then in 2018, Angela told you all about how Jim was being unfaithful to her. There was talk about her leaving. She said that there had been another incident 10 years before that. This was the second time. And she told you, you know, in 2022, yeah, I'm not ready to talk about it, but Tony did assume it was probably more than one person at the time. And the cross-examination was, well, you've sat through the trial. You've heard woman after woman after woman come in. So you know when she says it wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't that he wasn't cheating. You know, he was cheating. This is the defense. The defense is he was actually cheating. He was a serial cheater. And all of you know that they're adopting that as their defense. So she says that according to Angela, Jim had been to Montana, and Angela thought this was going to be a business trip. She did not ever say that she found out he was on a trip with another woman, but that she did say she thought it was a business trip. He admits that he was on seeking.com. He tells Angela what the site was used for, but that he wasn't using it for that he was just using it to make connections. It wasn't for sexual purposes. It wasn't for intimate purposes. And Tony said, no, she didn't believe that. Angela wanted to believe that. She personally did not buy that. Angela said Jim would tell her things like, you should leave me, and I am not good for you. And he said that several times. It wasn't just one time. It was more than once. And the defense, I always wonder, are they saying, well, she should have left him? I mean, he told her, he warned her. I don't know. Why are we pushing this? But she didn't want the marriage to end. Angela wanted to stay in the marriage. When she would find out about the cheating, they would argue. He would tell her, I'm not good enough for you. You deserve better. But Tony did point out, well, there were a lot of other conversations where he said, I want you to stay. I want to keep the marriage together. In fact, we spent hours going through those. The prosecution did in an earlier day of trial testimony, time after time, when he was telling her, you know, I love you, please stay, please don't go. I called it love bombing. If you want to go back and watch that video, he went on and on about how he wanted her to stay and wanted her to be with him. And Tony said, yeah, Angela said it was a roller coaster, up and down, you know, stay, leave, stay, leave. It was really a difficult thing to go through. So back to the period of time after Angela passed, there was a strange set of questions, and it wasn't really explained. That there was a question from the defense, you found Angela's journal after she passed, didn't you? And Tony pretty much didn't answer that question. She said, yeah, we couldn't find the family history. So we asked for a key and permission to go to the storage unit so we could find the family history. Well, that doesn't answer the question, right? So they come back to it. And she has to be prompted again. She says, well, yes, we found a journal. And we sent a copy to Detective Olson. We have not heard about that. I don't know what the deal is with that. At least I don't recall hearing about that at any point. I don't know if we will hear about it or if there's something wrong with it or if it was excluded as not being believable that it was Angela's. But there were questions around that. So there's kind of a missing something out there, a missing journal. So the jurors again had questions. They asked about Angela's usual sinus medication and what it looked like, and she described it. And they asked what kind of doctor Angela wanted to see on March 14th, and the answer was her primary care physician. And the hospital had told her to follow up, plus she wanted to figure out what was wrong. So the last person of the day was an expert, Garrett Lord, who does cellular cell phone analysis. And he got data from Angela Craig's cell phone and James Craig's cell phone and cell tower data and put all that together. Lots of really impressive exhibits for the jury. Thank you, little bit of Lisa. I appreciate that so much. And I'm glad you're enjoying the coverage. So he got data from Angela's cell phone and James's cell phone, and then the cell phone tower data and Google Voice records between Karen Kane and James Craig, and then records for James's vehicle, which was an Expedition. So he put all that together in maps and some timelines for the jury. It was really, really well done. So, and what was so amazing about this is it really showed, and we're doing a timeline too, but it shows how Craig was communicating with Angela and Karen at the same time. At the exact same time. On the 27th, he has known Karen Kane for about 5 days now, roughly. And Karen sends James a message. This is the longest I've gone without touching in with you. And this is all that morning when searches are being done on exam room 9. And so that's at 2:31 p.m., not morning, afternoon. 2:34 p.m., there's a search. So 3 minutes later, is there such thing as an undetectable poison? Exam room 9 computer. 3:20, how to make poison from oleander. Again, search on exam room 9 computer. Buy arsenic, Aurora, Colorado. Same computer. Then from 2:47 to 2:48, James Craig's device is at the cell site of that immediate area of Summerbrook Dental Office. So he puts all that together and says, we know that James Craig's device is in the area. We know someone's making these searches, and we know that he's communicating with Karen Kane at the same time. So you could kind of see it all laid out in a different way. On the 1st of March, there were searches in exam room 9 by barium carbonate, Aurora, Colorado. How long does it take to die from barium poisoning? And how long does it take to die from arsenic poisoning? And they interwove that with all the conversations back and forth with everybody. Then on the 6th, they had that message from Angela saying, I feel drugged. And then that was at 7:31 a.m. Then at 7:34 a.m., James is in the area of the dental office, which probably means he's in the dental office, but they can't say that for sure. All they can tell is that cell tower was communicating with his phone. And he's at, so they believe he is in exam room 9 searching for Visine and searching for tetrahydrozoline poisoning timeline in the middle of texting with Angela and with Karen Kane. All of that going on at the same time in the 7 a.m. hour on that day. And hugely important, I thought. Do you remember the guy who came in who was out there on the loading dock at Midland Scientific? And he says, this guy came up to the loading dock and was like, hey, where's the poison around here? Not quite that, but he came up and said, is there a store? And they said, yeah, we don't do a store. This is just a loading dock. And James at that very time was expecting a shipment of potassium cyanide. And the man said, so this guy with scrubs comes up, and then a week later, a couple of weeks later, I see on the news that this guy's been arrested for poisoning his wife. And I'm like, I recognize that guy. That is the guy who came up to our loading dock. Well, sure enough, if they didn't find it on the 8th, which is not exactly the day that the man remembered, but they have James going from the dental office out to Midland Scientific, which is exactly where this man worked. They also had him going to King Soopers. He bought a packet, a pile of Visine, and they believe some of that may have been used to poison Angela. They had the exact time he went to get the key to the dental office on the 13th to make sure he could get the potassium cyanide if it came. That may have been the 11th. And they also show that really quick time frame between the time he got to the hospital before Angela's crash on March 11th. Remember how he, according to the prosecution, they tried to say he'd been there 15 to 20 minutes. This is where they prove it. He had just gotten to the hospital at 11:50, at 11:58 to 12:18 a.m. He is in the hospital, and that is when Angela has her crash at 12:18. And that period of time was all he was there before she had this crash. All right. The cross-examination was kind of typical for cell phone data. We've heard this in multiple other cases, that you ping off a tower where you get a good quality signal. It might not be the one closest to you. It probably is, chances are, but you don't know for absolutely sure. And you can't really tell that this is exactly where somebody is. You can only tell they're in this vicinity. You can't say they're right here. And that's pretty typical. The cross-examination, there was one kind of odd question they asked him about being in his house and pinging from two different sides of the tower nearest him, as if he was moving around on his own property. But it wasn't really explained why that was so important. But boy, on cross-examination, they really went after that. It seemed like this was a really huge deal, but it wasn't fully explained. We may get more on that. I think that the prosecution is very close to the end of their case. There was even a comment from the judge late in the day about, how about if we talk about timing? But they went off, so we didn't get a chance to hear about it. They took it offline, so we didn't get to hear what the discussion was. So I don't know if the prosecution is nearing the end and maybe they're getting ready to start the defense case and wondering how long that will be. All right, well, if you have some, it was, to call this a wild day would just be an understatement. It was absolutely crazy. It was just an amazing day. So I want to say, I need to say hi to KH, a new member. I think I put Paula and Nana up too. So we've got several new members, and thank you so much to Jackie P and Nell T for gifting Lawyerly membership. So welcome to all of you who are new members. And so if you have some questions, let's do it this way. If you would put question marks at the beginning, then that'll help me spot it. We've gone a pretty long time. I'm pretty worn out, so we'll just do a short bit of question time. But if you've got one, please let me know with those question marks at the beginning. Oh, Allie B just got a new membership. Awesome, awesome. So I will tell you, this case is absolutely unbelievable. Everything about it, start to finish, is just wild. There's not a witness that isn't absolutely fascinating. It's very unique in this regard. I think if you started at the beginning with me, and if you didn't, go back to the beginning and watch the whole thing, because it was 2 days, and it was what you might expect in another trial in the equivalent of a couple of weeks. That's how much happened. It's just been really fast-paced, really fascinating. All right, so here we go with some questions. All right, I think I see from Paula. Did police have his business partner under police protection? That hasn't been mentioned. I don't think his business partner was the person targeted. And we were told that there were 4 different people who had been targeted as part of this murder for hire plot, or more than one plot. But I don't think it was the business partner, because there hasn't been any suggestion of that. We heard about an inmate in medical. We heard about a detective. There are 2 charges related to detectives. So there may have been another detective, but so far as testimony, we've heard about a plot against Detective Olson. We've heard about this unnamed inmate he met in medical, and that's about it. It was only 2 people who were subject to the murder for hire. So obviously very different. And Amanda is asking me, do you think James will testify? I have debated that. I think it's going to be a battle royal between his lawyers and James, because this is my theory about it. I think James is going to want to testify. I think he's going to think he can manage it. He can do really well. It's going to go great. He's going to convince the jury. They're going to buy it. Person after person has bought what he said in the past. He thinks he can do it. I think the attorneys are going to be like, this is going to be so bad if you take the stand. It's going to be brutal. Don't do it. So that's the way I think this argument has to be going. So it's just going to depend. If he insists on taking the stand, I just don't know that he's somebody who listens really well to his attorney. So I don't know if he'll follow their advice on this or if he'll do what he wants to do. We haven't gotten any hints on it yet. I don't know, but boy, do I want to be there if he testifies. Well, tell you what, I really want to be there. I hope I did not skip anybody, but next I see is Typhoon 0510. After some of today's comments, do you feel that a mistrial is likely or a stronger case for an appeal? I really don't, Typhoon. I don't see a lot of grounds for appeal. I am not seeing it. There were 2 comments by the brother that should not have been made and were a little too strong and shouldn't have happened. But I don't think either one of them rises to the level that would give a new trial to James Craig. So I don't think those comments change that. There could be some rulings on evidence that I don't know about, and that might be the case. Maybe they kept out some evidence that James Craig wanted. I don't know those rulings. So I can't say for sure. Those haven't been made public, and those could be great grounds for some kind of appeal. But as far as I know currently, I'm not aware of what the appeal grounds would be. Maya is asking about whether I'm attending the trial in person. I'm not, but I have been allowed, I've been given access to the court's WebEx. They're allowing media to watch via WebEx. So there's actually a camera. You can see sometimes they show the judge and you can see the defense table. Sometimes they show the witness, and I'm able to actually see the trial gavel to gavel. And it's been absolutely fascinating, absolutely incredible trial. Heidi Babcock is asking, do they have the death penalty on this? They don't. They are asking that he's charged with murder, but it's not a death penalty case. So I think it will be more of a, his sentence will be related to murder, but not the death penalty. Do you think the property was searched for buried poison? Asked Kathy. I don't know. We did not get testimony about that. And so I don't think that they searched the property to see if it was buried. My guess is they may have thought he didn't have enough time to destroy very much. They probably would like to find that bottle of pills, but who knows? Maybe he threw that out somewhere. It may not have been something that was there to find. Of course, let me be clear. The defense says the reason they didn't find the bottle of pills, or the reason they found a bottle of pills that had no potassium cyanide, is because the bottle of pills never had any potassium cyanide. So no wonder you didn't find it. Has James been excommunicated? I don't know. I don't know his status within the church. Interesting question, though. Beck's in Wonderland. Do the kids support him or Angela? I don't even know that you can answer that. It's so devastating. I can't even imagine the family and how they're dealing with all this. Early on, it was reported that the oldest son was kind of moving back and forth, bride's side, groom's side, but I don't know how the rest of the family has felt. There were 2 of the sisters who testified for the state, but they just testified to facts that they knew. It wasn't like they came out and said, yes, I believe my dad is guilty and I want him punished. It wasn't like that at all. They simply testified as well in questions that were asked of them. One, by the way, did talk about her dad sending out a letter where he asked her to fabricate some evidence. So that was in evidence from one of his own daughters. He had asked her to do that, and it came out. All right, Mindfulness asked me, the business partner who testified was the one who told about the cyanide. Right, yes, that's right. His name was Ryan Redfern. Citizen Yid, will they ever release the trial? Don't know. Interesting, but boy, it's worth watching. I'll tell you what. Kayla wanting Jumpsuit Pablo on. I don't know. We'll have to have him on again. Jumpsuits. Friend of the channel, been on a number of times. Liquidman.com says, will it be available to the public? Can't answer that. Does James Craig have any supporters on his side of the courtroom? He has some family members over there. Yes, there are people on that side. And often the way it works is the extra spots get filled in with just people from the community who want to watch or media who want to watch. So usually both sides are pretty full, regardless of how many of those people are actually related to or supporting one side or the other. In a big case like this, where there are a lot of people who want to attend. All right. Last question from Maya. Does Colorado have the death penalty? Well, she says she could Google it, but why not ask lawyer Lee? I think the answer is yes, but I don't know. I am not a Colorado attorney, so darn it, you'll have to Google it after all, Maya. Thank you for your confidence, though. All right, well, I will see you all tomorrow. It'll probably be again about 8:15 Eastern as we unpack tomorrow's events. Trust me, you do not want to miss a day. If you haven't watched all of the videos in this case, go back to day one. You will not regret it. It is absolutely the wildest trial. You are going to want to hear all of it. So go back to day one, watch the whole thing, and I will see you tomorrow night at roughly 8:15. And I'll do a notification.